There is a type of mass hypnosis that the modern world has never acknowledged. Not hypnosis by a swinging watch or by eyes, but hypnosis by numbers, by reports, by stories that are repeated again and again until they become the truth. Burkina Faso is the poorest in the world. Africa cannot feed itself. They need us. These 3 sentences have hypnotized the whole world for 60 years, until the day Ibrahim Traoré stepped onto the stage and said a simple sentence, "Wake up." And suddenly, 20 million people realized they were never truly poor. They were only hypnotized to believe that they were poor. To understand why what is happening in Burkina Faso is so revolutionary, we must first understand the machine that has operated for decades to keep Africa in a state of dependency. This is not just an economic system. This is an architecture of consciousness control, sophisticatedly designed to convince an entire people that they cannot be self-reliant. The first layer is psychological control. How to convince a people who once built great kingdoms that they cannot feed themselves. You don't say it directly like that. Instead, you repeat the story of the necessity of aid. You create metrics of success based on Western standards. You call traditional methods backward and indigenous solutions unscientific. For decades, Burkina Faso has heard that they need rice from Asia, wheat from Europe, even vegetables from neighboring countries. They were taught that their land is not fertile enough, their climate is not stable enough, their people are not educated enough to produce food themselves. The second layer is economic control through the system of raw materials for processed products. Burkina Faso grows cotton, but imports shirts. They grow cocoa, but import chocolate. They dig for gold, but sell it at a cheap price. This system did not form naturally. It was designed to ensure that added value always happens elsewhere, so that prosperity always flows out instead of remaining in the country. The third layer is intellectual control through brain drain and a dependency mindset. The brightest minds of Burkina Faso are educated according to Western programs, are encouraged to look outside to find opportunities, are taught that success means leaving their homeland. Those who stay are isolated from international knowledge networks, dependent on foreign experts to solve every problem. The fourth layer is cultural control by devaluing traditional knowledge and methods. Traditional agricultural techniques are called primitive. Indigenous medical systems are considered superstition. Local languages are pushed out of formal education. Meanwhile, everything that comes from the West is labeled modern, scientific, progressive. Previously, Burkina Faso imported 60% of the food consumed in the country. They received about $600 million in aid each year. 40% of the national budget depended on foreign funding. But the numbers only tell a part of the story. More important is the collective psychology that had formed. We cannot live without them. Government agencies were structured to serve donor logic instead of citizen needs. Policies were designed to please funding organizations instead of solving real problems. This is precisely the self-fulfilling prophecy. Believing in failure, thus creating failure. But there are moments in history when all these layers of deceit are peeled away, when a people sees the truth about its own strength. For Burkina Faso, that moment came when Ibrahim Traoré stood before the nation and declared, "We will feed ourselves with what this country produces." Not a political promise, not an empty slogan, but a declaration of a consciousness revolution. And standing at the center of this awakening is a man who has long understood that real strength does not come from the outside. Ibrahim Traoré is not just a leader. He is a philosopher of action, an architect of consciousness, a catalyst of transformation. To understand him, we must understand the philosophy he represents. The core philosophy of Ibrahim Traoré can be summarized in one belief. Every nation has within it everything necessary to prosper. This is not a romantic idealism. This is a practical philosophy built on historical evidence and scientific understanding. Burkina Faso has fertile land, a diverse climate, abundant water sources, and most importantly, people who are capable of learning and adapting. The problem is not a lack of resources, but the way resources are organized and utilized. He has translated this belief into policy through a series of concrete actions. Instead of focusing on attracting foreign investment, he focuses on mobilizing domestic resources. Instead of competing to receive aid, he creates conditions for people to help themselves. Instead of copying models from foreign countries, he adapts solutions suitable for Burkina Faso's specific context. The historical foundation of this philosophy comes from Thomas Sankara and African liberation philosophy. Sankara once said, "One cannot develop others. Each person must develop themselves." Ibrahim Traoré has taken this principle and adapted it for contemporary challenges. If Sankara was revolutionary romanticism, then Traoré is revolutionary pragmatism. The psychology of a revolutionary like Ibrahim Traoré is characterized by pattern recognition, the ability to see patterns that others miss. While everyone focuses on symptoms, he sees the underlying systems. While everyone reacts to immediate crises, he identifies root causes. He understands that poverty is not a lack of money, but a lack of productive capacity. Dependency is not a lack of resources, but a lack of confidence in local capabilities. He also has systems thinking, understanding that everything is connected. The education crisis is connected to the economic crisis. The economic crisis is connected to the cultural crisis. The cultural crisis is connected to the political crisis. To truly solve any problem, you must address the entire system. Long-term vision is another characteristic. While politicians often think in electoral cycles, Ibrahim Traoré thinks in generations. He doesn't just want to solve immediate problems, but to build foundations for sustainable prosperity in the decades to come. And finally, the courage of conviction, ready to confront powerful interests. Challenging the dependency system means challenging the people and institutions that have an interest in maintaining the status quo. This requires moral courage and political courage. Ibrahim Traoré not only has a vision, he has a methodology, a systematic approach to implement transformation. The first stage is consciousness raising, changing the narrative about Burkina Faso's capabilities. Instead of focusing on what the country lacks, he highlights what the country has. Instead of accepting a victim identity, he promotes a producer identity. He connects with cultural pride and historical memory, reminding people of the achievements of their ancestors and the potential of the current generation. The second stage is institutional transformation, restructuring the government to serve people and not donors. This means realigning priorities from dependency to self-reliance, from consumption to production, from external validation to internal satisfaction. He builds new partnerships based on equality rather than charity, on mutual benefit rather than one-way aid. The third stage is the economic revolution, focusing on production capabilities, not consumption capacity. Instead of importing everything, develop local value chains. Instead of exporting raw materials, add value before exporting. Keep wealth circulating within the country rather than flowing out. The fourth stage is a cultural renaissance, reviving traditional knowledge systems and blending ancient wisdom with modern techniques. Creating a new identity as producers and innovators rather than recipients and consumers. But philosophy means nothing without action. And the action of Ibrahim Traoré has created a movement that no one can ignore. A revolution is never just about one person. It is about the moment when the consciousness of one person spreads and becomes the consciousness of many people. In Burkina Faso, this spread happens with astonishing speed and scale. Initially, like every revolutionary idea, there was skepticism. The people had heard too many promises from politicians. They had been disappointed too many times. The first reaction was, "This is just another politician with empty words." But Ibrahim Traoré didn't just speak. He acted. And actions speak louder than words. The first early adopters were young farmers and entrepreneurs, those with the least to lose and the most to gain from change. They started to experiment with traditional seeds instead of relying on imported varieties. They formed local agricultural cooperatives to share knowledge and resources. They created innovation networks to solve practical problems. The tipping point came when these experiments started producing results. Farmers using traditional seeds discovered that their crops resist diseases better and require less water. Local cooperatives achieved higher yields with lower costs. Innovation networks developed solutions that foreign experts had never thought of. Mass conversion happens when the majority population sees tangible benefits, not from propaganda, but from practical experience. When neighbors succeed with local methods, skepticism turns into curiosity. When curiosity leads to experimentation, and experimentation leads to success, the belief system begins to shift. In the agricultural sector, the transformation takes place at the grassroots level. Farmers start to rediscover traditional seeds that their ancestors had cultivated for centuries. They realize that these varieties are not only adapted to the local climate, but are also more nutritious and flavorful than imported alternatives. Local agricultural cooperatives emerge organically, not from government mandate, but from practical necessity. Knowledge-sharing networks develop to transfer techniques from experienced farmers to the younger generation. Innovation and adaptation happen at every level. Farmers modify traditional techniques with modern tools. They combine indigenous knowledge with scientific understanding. They develop new approaches that utilize the best of both worlds. In the education sector, teachers start to incorporate local knowledge into the curriculum. Students learn about traditional farming techniques alongside modern science. They study local history and culture with the same seriousness as world history. Practical skills become as important as theoretical knowledge. Students develop pride in their local culture and capabilities. Instead of dreaming about escaping Burkina Faso, they dream about building it. Brain drain slows as opportunities appear locally. Young people see a future at home rather than abroad. In the economic sector, entrepreneurs start looking for local solutions rather than foreign partnerships. Investment shifts from attracting international capital to mobilizing domestic resources. New business models emerge based on local value creation rather than extraction and export. Economic nationalism develops, but not the xenophobic kind. This is a healthy pride in local capabilities combined with strategic thinking about global engagement. Trade continues, but from a position of strength rather than weakness. A revolution is not just about changing hearts and minds, it is also about changing systems and structures. Ibrahim Traoré understands that sustainable change requires institutional backing. Government restructuring begins with ministries being refocused from aid coordination to production support. Instead of optimizing for donor satisfaction, departments optimize for citizen welfare. Budget reallocation shifts resources from prestige projects to productive infrastructure. Decision-making processes prioritize long-term sustainability over short-term political gains. The economic policy revolution manifests in import substitution policies with realistic timelines. Rather than trying to replace everything immediately, the focus is on areas where local production is most feasible. Support for local industries and value-added processing becomes a priority. Financial systems are redesigned to serve local production rather than facilitate capital flight. Cultural policy transformation includes official recognition of traditional knowledge systems. Local languages are integrated into official communication. Cultural events celebrate self-reliance and innovation, rather than just entertaining donors. Media policies promote positive African narratives, rather than perpetuating victim stories. A true revolution does not respect borders. The ideas of Ibrahim Traoré and the success of Burkina Faso are starting to resonate across Africa and beyond. Leaders from other African countries are starting to study the model. Youth movements across the continent are adopting similar philosophies. Regional cooperation shifts from mutual weakness to mutual strength. A Pan-African consciousness revival with practical applications. Instead of just talking about African unity, countries begin implementing policies that support each other's development. Trade between African countries increases. Knowledge-sharing networks develop. International development organizations are forced to reconsider their approaches. Academic institutions begin studying the phenomenon seriously. Media coverage shifts from skeptical to curious to admiring. Global South countries take note of the alternative development path. Perhaps most importantly, Ibrahim Traoré contributes to an intellectual revolution. A new development theory emerges based on endogenous capabilities rather than external interventions. The challenge to neo-colonial assumptions about African potential becomes academic mainstream. The demonstration of an alternative modernization path inspires other developing countries. But a revolution is truly measured by the transformation it creates. Numbers and policies only tell a part of the story. The real transformation happens at the level of individual human beings. The way they think about themselves, the way they relate to the world, the way they envision the future. Amamu, a 45-year-old farmer from a rural area, shares, "Before, I only grew enough to get by. Every morning, I woke up worried if there would be enough to eat this season. Now I grow to feed the whole community and even export to neighboring countries. The difference is not the land or the seeds. The land is still that land. The seeds are still those seeds. It's the mindset." I realized I could be a producer and not just a survivor. Fatoumata, a 38-year-old teacher in Ouagadougou, reflects, "My students used to only dream about escaping Burkina Faso. They studied to get a visa, to get a scholarship abroad, to get an opportunity in another country. Now they dream about building Burkina Faso. They study to solve local problems, to create local opportunities, to contribute to community development. They see possibility instead of limitation. That is everything that education needs to do. Show people what's possible." Seydou, a 29-year-old entrepreneur, tells his story. "I used to think that to be successful, I needed foreign partners, foreign investment, foreign markets. My startup had to have a foreign brand, foreign technology, foreign everything to be taken seriously. Now I realize that real success comes from building something that the community owns and controls. Profits are not just money, but also dignity. Success is not just an individual achievement, but also collective empowerment. Individual transformation, when it happens at scale, creates societal transformation. Burkina Faso is experiencing fundamental shifts at every level of society. Local businesses are starting to link with each other instead of competing. Innovation clusters emerge spontaneously around solution-focused groups. Money stays local longer, creating multiplier effects throughout the economy. Community organizations become stronger and more effective. Intergenerational knowledge transfer increases with elders sharing wisdom and youth sharing energy. Women take leadership roles in new economic activities. Youth engagement increases with young people seeing a future at home. A language revival happens with local languages gaining prestige. Traditional knowledge becomes validated and modernized. New forms of artistic expression emerge celebrating self-reliance. Spiritual renewal connects cultural identity with economic success. Government becomes more responsive with public servants, more accountable to citizens. Schools teach skills needed for local development. Healthcare integrates traditional medicine with modern healthcare. The legal framework supports local enterprise and innovation. When individual transformation and societal transformation combine, the result is national transformation, a fundamental change in the character of the entire country. Food security shifts from import dependence to export capability. Employment grows in productive sectors. The trade balance improves with reduced imports and increased value-added exports. Financial independence increases with less reliance on foreign aid. Education outcomes improve with relevant skills and cultural pride. Health metrics show improved nutrition and healthcare access. Social cohesion strengthens with a greater sense of national unity. Migration patterns shift with youth staying and the diaspora returning. Regionally, other countries study the Burkina Faso model. Globally, respect grows for successful self-reliant development. Partnership terms improve with negotiations from a position of strength. Soft power increases with cultural and intellectual influence growing. Perhaps most important are the changes that cannot be measured easily. National confidence in collective capability. A future orientation planning for generations. creative energy enabling innovation at every level, the moral authority to stand up for the principles of dignity and self-determination. But this transformation is not only meaningful for Burkina Faso. A true revolution is never contained within borders. Ideas have a tendency to spread, especially when those ideas are backed by concrete results. A continental awakening is happening with other African leaders questioning dependency models. Youth movements across the continent are inspired by the possibility of self-reliance. Economic integration increases with African countries trading more with each other. Cultural pride renews with an appreciation for African knowledge systems. The development alternative proves that self-reliant development is possible. South-South cooperation creates new partnerships based on mutual respect. Knowledge sharing recognizes traditional solutions globally. Political models offer alternatives to Western-imposed governance structures. An academic revolution creates new frameworks based on endogenous capabilities. Research priorities focus on local knowledge. Educational curricula include African success stories. Publishing gives African perspectives global platforms. A media transformation shifts the narrative from Africa as a problem to Africa as a solution source. Documentary interest grows in filming the transformation. Social media enables African voices to control their own stories. Cultural products celebrate self-reliance through music, literature, and art. A revolution is truly measured by its impact on future generations. Children growing up in Burkina Faso today will have a completely different worldview from their parents. An educational foundation teaches them they are creators, not just consumers. Skill development gives practical abilities to solve local problems. Cultural grounding provides a strong sense of identity. A global perspective enables confident engagement with the world as equals. Policy frameworks design systems to maintain self-reliance. Economic structures include built-in protections against redependency. Cultural preservation maintains revolution values. A leadership pipeline creates a new generation committed to the path. Economic blocs enable African countries to cooperate as equal partners. Knowledge networks share innovations and best practices. Cultural exchange celebrates diversity while building unity. Political coordination creates common positions in international forums. If the Burkina Faso model spreads successfully, the development paradigm will completely rethink how countries develop. International relations will become more equitable. Economic systems will base trade on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. A cultural renaissance will respect all civilizations and knowledge systems. Ibrahim Traoré and the Burkina Faso Revolution teach universal principles applicable everywhere. Transformation begins in the mind. When people believe in their capabilities, those capabilities expand. This is true for individuals, communities, and nations. True strength comes from developing your own capabilities rather than depending on others. This doesn't mean isolation, but engagement from a position of strength. Innovation builds best on a cultural foundation. Rather than abandoning traditions, successful societies integrate traditional wisdom with modern techniques. Change requires courage. The courage to challenge existing systems. The courage to try new approaches. The courage to believe in possibilities others dismiss. Watching Burkina Faso transform raises a question. What revolution is possible in your own life, your own community? What dependencies can you eliminate? What capabilities can you develop? How can you contribute to, rather than just consume from your community? What local problems could be solved with local resources? What traditional knowledge is being undervalued? How can community members support each other's growth? What false limitations has your country accepted? What resources are being exported raw that could be processed locally? How can citizens take more responsibility for national development? Ibrahim Traoré has shown us that a revolution doesn't need violence, just a clear vision of what's possible, a commitment to practical action, a belief in people's capabilities, a willingness to challenge assumptions, and persistence in the face of skepticism. Burkina Faso has proved that transformation is possible. The question is, who will be next? Which community, which country, which individual will embrace the revolutionary mindset and create their own transformation. The revolution is waiting. The question is, are you ready to join it?